Okay, so I guess my first question would just be, how did Solve come about? What was its foundation, whether that's your academic background, your personal background, just basically how did Solve become to be?
Wow, I feel like soul, in a very weird way, is something that was always within me. I just didn't find it yet. Coming from a family of activists, grandparents that, were one of the first in the Birmingham community as pioneers of, starting community projects within the community, and then having uncles and aunties, parents that were invested in community work, education. I've always kind of been surrounded by that type of energy, working for the people, supporting the people, helping the people. I guess teenagers and growing up and not wanting that and doing so many other things, some way it's found me again. And working with young people, then going into academia, lecturing at a university, and then going into kind of other pursuits nationally or internationally. I guess the fundamental question that I've always kind of asked myself was, what is it that I ultimately want to do? And I think part of the reason why I probably didn't do it, and I know this is going to probably sound strange, is out of fear and confidence. I was always kind of comfortable to be in a space where I had other people leading, and I would just be happy to kind of do it. Now I've got leadership skills, but being in a leader is something completely different. And I kind of felt that when I got to a point last December, where one of my business partners, colleagues and friends died to cancer, and a lot of stuff was really going on for me. And then I had an uncle that passed, a student of mine that passed. It really kind of started me thinking about not just my mental health and my emotional well-being, but I wanted to just be happy with the work that I did. Someone asked the question, what does Craig do best? And I thought, I solve a problem. I help solve problems. And that's kind of where the kind of inception of Solve kind of came. That's what I'm good at doing. I'm good at solving problems. I'm good at helping people understand an issue, understand the problem, and helping them to solve or at least make the situation better. When a situation happens in a community where someone dies, someone gets killed, I go into households and I solve some of the problems that parents, family members may be essentially confused with. So that's what Solve ultimately came to be.
And so what would you say then that the main components, if you like, what are the main components that make up Solve?
So I thought that because I've come from a space of, I've always been a motivational speaker. I've always been someone that is able to kind of articulate people's thoughts, young people's thoughts, people in the community's thoughts, and articulate it in a way in which people can understand it, that feels comfortable, that helps them to think critically about things that are going on. I thought training and development made perfect sense. So that was one element of what Solve delivers. Then it also was about research, because I talk about my unique selling point being bridging the gap between academia and the streets. That's what my USP is, that I have the academic context, but also the frontline experience. So research is also important. So not only training and development, research, but also working with young people. That has always been my original passion. But not working with young people in the way in which I worked with young people previously. I wanted to be around organizations that were working with high-risk cases. When I say high-risk cases, we're talking about young people that sadly are involved in gun and knife crime. Young people that are also victims of gun and knife crime, and anything to do with violence and conflict. I wanted to ultimately be amongst that, support people to be able to do it. And then that links to the last part around my advocacy type of kind of work, because there are families, as I've just mentioned before, that are dealing with problems, dealing with issues, and they need help. So like, for example, one particular family that I've worked with, where there was a number of shootings that took place in the local community in Birmingham, We supported that family to get a move. So working in conjunction with housing, working in conjunction with the local police, to move that family to safety. And that wouldn't have happened if that family alone was speaking on their own. So as kind of a holistic model, Solve ultimately sits on what I call a public health approach, or follows in line with a public health approach, something that is community-led and something that is academically driven. And we straddle that line between what I call academia and the streets, ultimately to solve the problems that exist within our community.
So with that holistic approach that you take, which is something that I really appreciate, and I think it's something that we definitely need to have more of in youth justice work, what is the ultimate goal of this holistic approach?
Ultimately for us, it's responding to violence and conflict amongst our young people. And in any way, shape or form that impacts children, young people and their families, Solve is here to support organizations, professionals, parents, and young people themselves. That we're not an organization that just works with young people. We're not an organization that just works with professionals. We kind of work with quite a few. And even I just kind of just highlight some of our recent experiences. We're currently working with Chelsea Football Club, working with their football players. We would have never thought that we would have been working with those types of young people, but we recognize that even those young people that are in the academies, whatever team that they play for, those young people are impacted by mental health, impacted by violence, impacted by living in communities where violent behavior may exist. So it makes sense then that we support those particular entities in order to understand and also create strategies that we can keep children and young people safe.
So something I wanted to get your take on was, what does youth justice actually mean to you? Because this is something that we've stumbled upon as we've been relaunching as the Alliance for Youth Justice, just thinking about that language. And actually, when we strip everything away, what does this actually mean? What does youth justice mean to Solve and to yourself?
What youth justice ultimately means to Solve is a number of things: freedom, justice, equality, equity, and fairness. And most importantly, humanity. We need to be treating individuals like human beings. And you know why? Because it's the right thing to do. And if we take away all of the labels, we talk about the premise of all of these things are, it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's what that means to us.
Now, obviously, you're from Birmingham, can tell by the accent, but your work and Solve's work isn't just based in the West Midlands, is it?
No, we're a national organisation. So currently we've got a contract with Norfolk County Council's Children's Services as a consultant advisor and also trainer to their social work teams across the county. And we do work with the National Youth Agency with some of their research and the stuff that they roll out with their youth work practitioners. We work with a number of violent reduction units. So Nottingham, we've done stuff with Bristol as well as the West Midlands. We do work with the Crown Prosecution Service, West Midlands, as well as in London. So as a body, we're national. I might be a Brummie, I might sound like I'm from Brum, and I am from Brum, but ultimately the work is national.
And I guess the reason I kind of draw in on the location of your work is because I'm also from the West Midlands, I'm from Coventry. And I just wanted to know whether you think that sometimes the conversations around youth justice can end up quite London-centric. I wondered whether you feel like ever the conversations need to be widened at all.
Yes and no, because I have a national lens. I can be in Brighton having this conversation. I think when we talk about media coverage and national conversations, and yes, we will agree that it's generally London focused. I think the danger is that London's culture is different to cultures of other cities and other spaces around the UK. So, one of the things I remember talking to someone about is, like, for example, Brum don't really have estates like London. So even when you talk about the context of gangs, don't move like that.
Mm.
When the youths in London are talking about my block, ain't no blocks in Brom, streets and cul-de-sacs. So the geographical context is completely different. So if it's generally London focused, like me working in Norfolk, I'm in Great Yarmouth, and there's young people that live near the seaside, that on madness and badness. So the context can't be London-centric, because then you're leaving behind a whole mass group of particular young people that have the potential to be violent, to be involved in some of the conflicts that we talk about every single day, and they just don't get fit in the narrative, and they get lost in the source, as many would say.
So I'm assuming then that you have to adapt quite a bit with your work.
You have to take that person-centered approach.
Yeah.
And that is kind of what I teach. You know, we have to take person-centered approaches to this issue. What we can't do is put our city in the middle and then operate outside of that. No, we need to put the issues at hand, and then we need to say, well, the issues are national. Especially if youths are jumping from London and going Conch, or youths are leaving from Brum and ending up in Cardiff, in Worcestershire, then that means that we can't focus on the inner city, because that means the youths in Worcestershire, the youths in Coventry, the youths in Cardiff are ultimately going to be impacted by the mindset of the young people that are moving from place to place. And almost, like I call it, like a disease, they get infected by the poison. So then that's why you see youths that are in Great Yarmouth talking about OFB, but they've never been to Tottenham before in their life. And that's the point. So you can't focus on one particular area, because youths are mimicking and copycatting young people from different parts of the world. The same way London man, Brum man, copy man from Chicago, talking about drillers and drilling. They're not UK terminologies. They're from America. Trapping, bando, all American terminologies. So like how we know violence can be globalized through social media and technology, I think we're doing ourselves a disjustice by following and understanding violence as it relates to young people, or justice in context, only from one particular region or space.
And next, I think we couldn't really have a conversation without kind of thinking about the pandemic, and how has COVID impacted your work, impacted your organisation and the young people you work with?
Fortunately, we've been blessed in the sense that, because of the type of work that we do with high-risk cases, we have to engage with those young people anyway. I'm talking about young people that are in care services, young people that are known to youth offending. So as key workers, we kind of had that strand to be able to come work with those young people. And I think because we do a lot of training and development, we've just adapted to the online sphere, and we just do webinars all day, loads of events on Zoom, Teams. So I believe that actually our capacity has actually increased in COVID-19 to be able to reach so many organizations, and people are now, because they're at home, there's nothing for them to do, we can put a video online or Instagram, and a lot more people are finding out about the work that we do. For young people, the only challenge that I've found is, because so many organizations, buildings are closed, schools are closed, the interaction where young people are in buildings, there's a lot more young people out that are more vulnerable and susceptible to issues around county lines, CSE, criminal exploitation, extremism, any form of kind of negativity. The exposure to young people has increased because there's not enough entities or institutions to be able to engage with those young people. So our job becomes harder in that sense, because we can't engage with every single young person everywhere. And I would say that is probably the only challenge, but not necessarily a challenge, because it's actually opened up the door for us to spread our wings and for people to say, you know what, Solve actually is an entity that can help and support. And ultimately it's a need.
Yeah.
The service that we provide is a need. People want to know how to engage with people. People want to know how to respond better to violence. People want to know how they can build their skills and their competencies around engaging children and young people and their families. So as that is kind of one of our priorities, it makes perfect sense, as people can't go to work, they're at home, they can't have meetings all day. So there's an opportunity for training and development, and that's where we ultimately fit in.
Yeah.
And because also workers can't be in their buildings to engage with young people, and also people have to self-isolate, people are getting COVID. So some workers can't engage with their young people, even if they wanted to. Again, our organization is available to engage with young people. So there's loads of opportunities, even on the basis of COVID-19, where Solve has been able to execute because we do such a variety set of things.
And now, obviously, I know this year is going to bring with it its challenges, but also, as you say, its opportunities. And so what's next for Solve?
So what's next for us? Obviously, we'd love to do some more work with some more teams within the Premiership. One of our, you want to call it priority, is developing some more work around the anti-racist agenda. And developing sessions around anti-racist practice, because we don't just only focus on youth violence, but we also talk about racism and the impact of racism and how that operates within institutions structurally. So a lot of our work that we're now being called in for, from again Chelsea, Crime Prosecution Service, Police and Crime Commission, the county councils or statutory bodies across different cities. That's what they're calling us in for as well, to help them develop their policies and their training around understanding racism and anti-racist practice. So that is something that is definitely on our agenda that we're also ultimately developing. And I think it's good that it shows Solve's versatility, that we're not pigeonholed to one thing. We only deliver stuff around gang violence or criminal exploitation or county lines or extremism. We actually do so much other things as well. And I think that the stuff around anti-racist practice has definitely opened up a new door for us to be able to show our versatility and also create new networks in different sectors that we wouldn't have before.
And I just want to ask, how have you found the anti-racist events or anti-racist training that Solve has been holding over the past few months? How have you found that for yourself?
Challenging. As I say, as a facilitator, it's triggering. I think some people have this kind of a notion that because you're a Black person, you're a person of color, that you just talk about these things and it's okay. Talking about race is very triggering, only on the basis that you get to a point where how much time do you have to explain to white people about racism? So it's quite taxing, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. But I'd like to think that I'm a hopeful person. Yeah. I'd like to think that with the struggles, sacrifices, challenges, trials and tribulations, that our great-great-grandparents, our ancestors ultimately went through to get to a place where I'm even able to talk at this level. I have to acknowledge that moving forward, because there's going to be kids and teenagers that are looking at our generation saying, where are the people that stood on their shoulders, meaning our ancestors, and are taking this argument and forward. Mm-hmm. And I would like to be part of my legacy as one of those people that continue the fight of not just my grandparents that did what they did in the West Midlands, but my great-great-great-grandparents that were at one point on slave ships and probably thought, we can't do this no more, we don't want to do this no more. And they were probably a group of people that said, you know what, no, because maybe in the future, our children's children will be in a better situation. And I have to think like that.
And I guess to wrap up then, I just want to know, what is your hope for the future? What kind of future do you strive for within your work?
I don't live in an idealistic world, but if we can save one child's life, if we can keep one family safe, then we've done our bit for the community.